Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to City Skylines 2, and welcome to a first look at the Modern Architecture Content Creator Pack coming to City Skylines 2 on December 2nd, 2024, featuring 21 new service buildings. You know what? Let's not ramble, let's not waffle, let's get to it. So welcome to my little testing area out in the middle of nowhere. This is where we're going to be going through the 21 new service buildings that are in the Modern Architecture Content Creator Pack. And we're going to be getting started in the healthcare and deathcare category with the little adorable Modern Medical Clinic, which I think looks absolutely fantastic. I love this asset. I love the detail on it. I love the consideration for some disabled parking right here as well. And I do love any asset that makes a point of trying to get some kind of little, just pedestrian space, just a little plaza, some places to sit, enjoy a sandwich. It's a medical center. You're not going to be eating anything good here, but you can sit out back in the middle of nature or next to some dumpsters and enjoy a medical center sandwich and maybe a slightly room temperature can of Coke that you got from a vending machine that barely works, or that is conspicuously stocked with brands of drinks that you can't really get anywhere else than the medical center. It is worth mentioning, this thing can be expanded with an additional clinic center and a specialized treatment wing. We're going to start with the specialized treatment wing because it actually gets rid of some of that pedestrian space that I absolutely adore. That does give us plus 100 patient capacity though, which is absolutely fantastic. And then we have the additional clinic center, which gives us plus 20 patient capacity and a little bit of cargo storage as well. The reason I wanted to wait to show you this one second is because it actually can't be detached from the main building the way a lot of assets like this can be. And that's making me think that it's possible that this pack was finished before that change was made to base game City Skylines, where you could detach extensions from the, I guess, the core building. It's not necessarily the end of the world that you can't do that with this asset, but it is worth remembering and noting that if you place that on the left side where that parking lot is, you actually don't have pedestrian access, so you do have to be careful with where you place this thing. Somewhere at the back is just fine, or you could move it to over there, or you could maybe move it to that corner. Just don't put it next to the parking lot. The next asset that we're going to be looking at is the modern hospital. So we're staying in the healthcare and deathcare category. We are moving up in the world a little bit. It's considerably more expensive. This is $1.14 million, where the modern medical clinic was $50,000. So over 20 times the price. This does start with a patient capacity of 300, where the modern medical clinic started with 90. So this thing is a fair bit larger and a fair bit more expensive, but it's another asset that I really, really enjoy. I love the details. I love the consideration again for some disabled parking here. I love the little kiosk thing with the barriers. I love that there's dumpsters out here as well. There's a lot of thought, care, and attention that has gone into this asset. I also like that it's colorful and kind of curvy. You know, it's got a little bit of a curve going on there. We got some curves over here as well. I do like a big curvy asset. So this definitely ticks all the boxes and what I'm looking for in a good asset. It also has some expansions available. Once again, we have something like a medical center, which gives us plus 60 patient capacity. And unfortunately, it is the same story as it's going to be the entire way through this pack, where this cannot be detached from the main building, but it can live over there. And we do have an extension tower, which is going to give us plus 450 patient capacity. And it does also give us a helipad up top there, which again, I think looks absolutely fantastic. Again, I love the curves on this. I love the color on this. I don't love that we can't detach this asset from the main building, but I do really look forward to playing with this in and around all of my different cities. And so now we're going to move into the education category, because we are going to be taking a look at 5 new education buildings, starting with the Community Elementary School, which is a teeny tiny little asset here that once again comes with a little bit of pedestrian space here on the side. A lot going on with textures in here with different surfaces, from the parking lots to the tiles to the concrete slabs to the wood, and then the sandstone-ish looking brick texture on the building itself. This entire thing I just adore. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. I love the colors, I love the style, I love the mix of woods and stones. It's just one of my favorite styles of architecture. I really love this little asset, and honestly, at first glance it doesn't really look like an elementary school, so you could put this in a neighborhood and pretend it's an apartment building so that you can't visibly see the elementary school. Now, of course, this guy does have some expansions. It actually has a really important expansion, which is the community playground. This gives us plus 20 outdoor recreation, and it fits perfectly behind the building. It is, of course, a soccer field and 2 basketball courts. Now, this is something I want to see more of in Cities Skylines 2. I want to see more educational facilities that have sports expansions available, because usually you're building it as an extra thing, and that's okay. You get that little bit of leisure and entertainment from doing it, but I would like to see sports facilities in the education facilities just that little bit more. Now, there is another expansion available. It is the extension wing. It gives us plus 150 students on top of the 300 that are in here from the jump. And unfortunately, it is going to be getting rid of that little pedestrian space that I adore. But again, it just looks spectacular. A little bit of a different color coming in there with the red wood on the tower, but I think it's a fantastic looking asset. It's the Community Elementary School upgraded, has a capacity of 450. I love it. I really do. And so that brings us to a slightly larger asset, which is going to be the Modern High School, which I've got to say, as far as modern high schools go, it definitely looks like a modern high school. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, it's sort of got that stereotypical quintessential high school vibe to it. If this was a red brick building with a peaked roof, it would look like every high school main building that you've seen in every movie ever. It just so happens that this one is sort of a modern interpretation of that, and I really appreciate it. Once again, we have consideration for some disabled parking down here. We have some beautiful little fountains going on at the front there as well. And we also have some EV parking over on the left side, which I think is a nice little touch. This thing, of course, does have some upgrades available. We have some mindfulness rooms, which I suppose helps students regulate emotional stress. These guys get slapped onto the front of the building right there. We also have additional teaching buildings available, which will increase the student capacity by 300. This does start with 650 as the capacity, and these guys do get slapped onto the side of the building just over there. There is also a student dormitory, which is plus 200 student capacity, which in this case we can put back here. And that gives us a pretty interesting looking high school campus area. Very big fan of this. Absolutely adore anything that makes an educational facility look a little bit bigger, a bit more detailed, like you might have to go from one building to another to get to your next class. I really do enjoy this. And you can, of course, go in and stack these upgrades if you really wanted to. So we could do another dormitory back there, and that gives us capacity of 1,350. If I didn't have these roads on the right side, we could put in another teaching building and bring that up to 1,650. But interestingly, there is another building that we'll get to in just a little bit that you can go crazy with in terms of upgrades, and you can get some serious capacity on. But before we get there, let's take a moment to talk about the next education building in the list, which is the Modern Community College with a capacity of 5,000. Yep, 5,000 students. It looks like this. It's a beautiful building. It's a little bit different to what we've seen so far. A little bit more red or orange, depending on how your screen's calibrated in terms of color. For me, it sort of looks orangey, but on my preview for my recording, it looks kind of more red, so I really don't know. It's a great looking building though. Absolutely love the details going on. Once again, We have some space over here for people to sit and enjoy some fountains. We've got a little seating area outside. Just a really, really great building. Again, featuring a bunch of pedestrian space, which is something that I absolutely adore. Of course, it has some upgrades available. It does have an extension wing, which gives us this big old tower looking thing on the left side. It also comes with another 200 student capacity, which is beautiful. We have a college dormitory, which is going to give us plus 750 student capacity, which we can just put back there for now. And it also has a sports field, which now that I think about it, let's put the dormitories over there. Let me bulldoze that dormitory, and we'll put this at the back because it's absolutely enormous. And again, it plays in really nicely to that thing that I said about getting more sports facilities into our education facilities. This is a really good example, though, of the problem that we're going to be seeing with the inability to detach certain upgrades from the core building. If I could stack a bunch of these dormitories around that sports field, I think it would look a little bit better. As it stands at the moment, you will have to play around with a fair bit of detailing to just sort of make this thing feel like it hasn't just been randomly placed here, because it doesn't have any hedges or fences or anything like that. So keep that in mind when you're placing down this asset. But I mean, it's City Skylines 2. We're all here for the detailing, right? That's what we're gonna do with this. We're gonna make it look incredible. It looks incredible already, but I think, you know, we've got a beautiful meal here. We're just gonna season it a little bit to taste. That's what we're doing. I'm kind of hungry when I'm recording this. If it's not obvious, it will be. Anyway, the next asset that we're going to be taking a look at is the Modern University. Once again, of course, in the education category, and it is right here for $750,000. It also has a student capacity of 5,000, and it looks a little bit smaller than our last building. I've also placed it wrong there, so we'll just get it right into that corner. Again, absolutely beautiful looking building. They're all very, very unique in this category, and I do really, really appreciate that. Once again, we've got some consideration for different parking categories and zones and whatnot. Really, really pleased with this. Loving just the little props out front for people to sit. That's one of my favorite things to do with anything I build in City Skylines 2, is just go in and just add a few little props here and there. I don't do it enough. I really, really don't, but my videos tend to be long enough as it is, so that's probably for the best. Let's be completely honest with ourselves. Now, of course, this guy also has some upgrades available. We have the Academy building, which is going to give us plus 750 student capacity. This is another building that does get slapped around the edge of the main asset, so we'll put it back there so it kind of lines up with the parking lot just a little bit. We also have the University Library, which gives us plus 400 students, and it's also going to go just over here to the side. Now, that is a very different looking building to the main university itself. I'm also noticing the stairs in there. I hadn't seen that before. It's very, very cool. Again, just a beautiful, wonderful amount of detail on all of these assets, from the air conditioning units that actually look like they have little moving fans in there. I'm pretty sure that is just an asset in City Skylines 2, but no wonder this game runs so badly. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, but you know, why is that like, I appreciate the effort, I really do, but man, that's so much, that's so extra. Anyway, the last upgrade for this thing is an extension wing, which is going to give us plus 100 students, and unfortunately gets rid of the parking lot, but it does keep, well, it moves the parking lot, to be fair, and it does it in a really, really nice way. We still have some parking, we still have room for disabled parking and EVs. We have some parking back here as well, which I think is fantastic, and honestly, I'm a really big fan of this university asset. I think it looks incredible. I love the details. I really, really do. But the next and final education asset really just, this next one is the one that we can have some serious fun with. And that's going to be the Modern Technical University, which is this absolute chungus of a building here for $500,000. Only 2,000 students, but we're going to have some fun with this thing in just a moment once we get into the upgrades. Now, this thing is one of the few buildings in City Skylines 2 that I think has a somewhat realistic amount of parking out front. I also love the textures on the floor with the tiles. I think it looks incredible. I love all of these elevated plazas with all of the seating around here. Underneath as well, we have some details, and I'm sure, although I haven't tested, I'm sure there'll be Sims walking around here. And if not, then we can make them walk around here. We have invisible pedestrian paths available with some mods, so we can absolutely make them do that. But that's not the special thing about this building. What's special about this building is just how many upgrades there are. So I mentioned the beautiful, massive, mahoosive parking lot that's out here. Well, we can get rid of some of that, and we can get an extra 3,000 students with this extension wing. We can then get another 250 students with this extension wing. We could then go and increase the student capacity by 500 by swapping out that plaza with just a bunch of paving. We could then go and get a technical academy building, which will give us another 1,000 students. Now, I'm going to get to that. We also have a lecture hall, which is going to give us another 500 students. So it can live back there because I think that's a pretty good place for it. And here's the fun thing that you can do with this asset. You can go in, now keep in mind the technical academy building is plus 1,000 students. We're currently sitting at 6,250. So let's make that, well, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, maybe 10,000 students, 10,250. Maybe you want to go further, 11,000. Maybe you want, I don't know, 12,000. You could go further if we didn't have this lecture hall. You could, theoretically, if you really, really wanted to and happened to be an absolute maniac, you could just stack a few more of these guys, something like that, and you can have a modern technical university with a capacity of 15,750 students. And you could go further. If I didn't have that road on the right, I could add another 4,000. We could have 19, almost 20,000 students attending this university. If you really wanted to, that is wild. You could get rid of the need for any other university in your city with this asset. Anyway, we're going to move on from education and we're going to start looking into the fire department of the city because there are two new assets here. We have the community firehouse, which is a much smaller asset than we've been looking at recently, but again, absolutely beautiful. I love the detail. There's a lot going on here, a lot to see and a lot to appreciate. And I don't know if it's just me, but I'm getting kind of a Japanese vibe from this. I don't know if that's intentional or I'm just imagining it, but it's just, there's a little hint of it and I really do appreciate it. Now, of course, this guy does have some upgrades available. We have the firehouse garage or garage, either or, extension, which I believe, oh, it changes up the front as well. Oh, I like that a lot, actually. It adds the little sign out front. It adds the little booth out front. And then at the back, you have this. Now, this is going to add 4 fire engines on top of the 4 that are here already. So we'll go ahead and place that. We have a firehouse disaster facility, which, let's see, specialized rescue service workers, search for survivors in collapsed buildings. Okay, we can go ahead and place that maybe at the back. And we have a firehouse watchtower, which is going to make it a little bit better for us dealing with forest fires, which I'm not really too worried about those right now, but we could go ahead and place it at the back. And that is a fully upgraded community firehouse, which of course brings us on to its big brother, which is going to be the community fire station featuring 7 fire engines from the jump. It's also over $1 million. It's a fair bit bigger as well. And again, it is a beautiful looking asset. There's some beautiful details in here. I'm going to say beautiful a lot in this video in case I haven't been saying it already. Very, very pleased with what I'm seeing on this one. Also, this is a detail. The washing lines up here is just I don't want to say beautiful again. It's an incredible, it's a wonderful amount of storytelling. It's the idea that the firefighters are, you know, they're spending a couple of days in the fire station, so they have to wash their uniforms, their clothes, their bed clothes, whatever it is, hang them out to dry. I love that. It's just such a joyous, I'm going to try and come up with a different word every time. Whatever. It's storytelling. It's cinema. There you go. That's what it is. Now, this thing does have some upgrades. Like I mentioned, we're going to be starting with a fire station gate with helipad, which is going to place a helipad at ground level, which is something we don't see all that often in Cities Skylines 2, but I like it a lot. I think it's really cool. I think it's a great little bit of detail. We also have an additional fire engine hole, which is going to bring us from 8 vehicles, which I realize one of those is the helicopter. So 7 engines up to 12 engines in total. And again, we're seeing this issue where it doesn't necessarily play nicely with certain sides of the building. That's totally fine. We'll go ahead and put it back there where it seems to play quite nicely. And then we have another fire station watchtower, which thanks to Anarchy, I can place down here. But if I didn't have Anarchy on, you absolutely cannot place this next to the helipad. So you do have to be mindful of that, because as it stands, I can't place it back there either. So what we'll do is move this down that way. Apparently it doesn't want to move though. Oh, that's very interesting. It doesn't want me to place it there, and I'm not sure why. That's nothing that can be solved with a little bit of cheeky anarchy. So we'll just go ahead and put the watchtower down here, and that is a fully upgraded community fire station. Once again, I love the details. I love the colors on this one as well. And I love the storytelling, as well as the fact that these guys have changed out. They're not living here anymore. They got some tables and chairs, which is totally fine. Now, moving on, but staying in the emergency services category, we're going to be taking a look at the modern police station for $180,000. It has 25 jail cells, 6 patrol cars, and happens to look a little something like this. I love this building. I really do. I love the big old sign right up there above the door is great looking. Is there anything on the roof? There's another little washing line up in the roof. I'm going to be looking out for those absolutely everywhere now. Just everywhere. Gonna be finding, I'm never going to not notice those. We got some fountains out front that look, are they supposed to be green? Is that water supposed to be green? I'm not really sure what's going on there, but we're not going to worry too much about it. This guy, of course, has got some upgrades available. Again, we have a station gate with helipads, so we can put a helipad at ground level on this guy as well. We have an investigating team building, which is going to give us 4 more patrol cars, and we can add 10 more jail cells with a small jail, which I guess we'll put over there and go have a bit of a look at what we're dealing with. So this is the investigative team building. I kind of like it. It's pretty good. We got some motorcycle parking out front there as well. We got a service vehicle parking there and there. And then for the jail cells, well, yeah, that's just looks like a little holding cell yard or something. I don't know if you get 10 jail cells in there in, well, any kind of humane way, but that's totally fine. That's just, you know what? That's just how policing in Cities Skylines 2 happens to work. We'll not worry too much about it. Now, our next building isn't an emergency service, but it is a city service building, specifically a citizen service center. This building doesn't have any upgrades, but it basically, well, it's an alternative version of the welfare office, and again, has that wonderful amount of detail going on outside, plenty of space for people to sit and relax and just enjoy, well, I would say enjoy nature, but this is probably going to be built in a relatively built up urban downtown sort of space. So enjoy the sound of traffic going by, I suppose. Now, let's say the Citizen Service Center, try saying that 5 times really fast, isn't your thing. There is another government building available in this pack, which is going to be the Modern City Hall. It's $2.4 million, which is fairly expensive, especially with $200,000 a month to maintain it, but when you have a look at it, you can kind of see why it is as expensive as it is. This building is absolutely stunning, and there are some interesting things that you could hypothetically do with it, such as going into upgrades and getting an extension wing which is going to reduce building leveling cost citywide and increase attractiveness citywide. And it looks like that, which is just incredible. Absolutely, absolutely love that. It's floating, by the way, just in case you were wondering. There is nothing holding that up other than the supports and the walkways that lead out to it. And there's an interesting little thing that we could do with that, which when I saw this building, the first thing that came to mind was that I wanted to go into subways. I wanted to get some subway track. I want to have it elevated like this, and I just want to go straight through here. I just love this as an idea. This is just something that I think it just looks really cool, and it kind of just works, you know? Like, you could do a couple of these. I don't know if you would do it through your city hall, but you could theoretically run subways through your city hall. Now, while we're on the topic of public transport, there are a few new public transport assets in this pack, and that's going to be including and starting with a little local bus station, which happens to look a little something like this, which, again, I mean, I could say it looks beautiful. We've been there, we've done that. We've said that about just about every single building in this pack so far. So yeah, that's the takeaway, is that I think the pack looks really, really good. This guy does have some upgrades as well, as most of the bus stations in the game do have. I actually hadn't noticed the little fountain at the back here. That's beautiful. I guess we're gonna just commit to it at this point. We do have space though for an extra 5 platforms, and we do have space for a bus service station, which is an office building to provide support services to your bus network. This is something that kind of gets snapped around this building. I don't really know what it does. I'm not gonna lie. We'll put it over here just so it's kind of at the road, I guess, and it looks okay. Again, I don't really know what the benefit of that is, but this entire asset is pretty great looking, and I think it'll be perfect in any sort of urban setting as a new, slightly more, I don't know, slightly more imposing bus station. I suppose we'll go with imposing in a good way. It's very jagged and square and modern architecture. There we go. Now, sticking with public transport, but getting a little bit more on rails, we're going to be taking a look at 2 new train stations, starting with possibly my favorite asset in this entire pack, which is the local train station. Now, it doesn't look like much at first glance. It's a parking lot. It's a little square, sort of tan, sandy looking building. It's just a big concrete plaza, and it's 2 platforms. This asset can be transformed in a way that I want to see done more often in Cities Skylines 2. So if we go in here, we have some of the usual suspects. You can get extra platforms, you can get a platform roof, you can get a subway interface, and all of that is great. This asset as it sits right now is wonderful. I love it. I really do. It looks like the type of train station you would see in a town in the UK that would have been built sort of late 80s, 90s, kind of up to mid 90s. Pretty standard. Nothing to write home about. It's just a box for, you know, someone to go through, get some tickets, and then go get in a train. And that's okay. I don't mean that in a bad way. It does what it says on the tin. It's a local train station. But you then have the modern train station entrance, which just transforms this asset into something that's just, it's totally different. It really, really is. I want to see more assets do this, where you have an upgrade available that just completely changes the vibe of the entire asset. This doesn't look like a little, you know, tiny little local UK train station anymore, at least not one that was built in the, you know, 90s. It looks like something that was, I mean, it was probably built in the 90s and they knocked down the old building and put this thing up, but I don't have the words to describe how exciting this is, or how excited I feel about this concept for Cities Skylines 2, where you have upgrades that can genuinely just transform an asset. And I suppose now is as good a time as any to move on to the second train station, which is the Central train station for $200,000. It starts with 7 train platforms and is considerably larger than the little local train station. Again, just a wonderful amount of detail going on here. We have a lot of motorcycle parking, just a lot of parking in general, which is always good to see. One of my biggest issues with City Skylines 2 is how much parking. It's not an issue. I like it, but it's an issue because I keep forgetting to add parking facilities to my cities. That's why it's one of my biggest issues. It's my issue. Anyway, a lot of parking here. Good to see. Another handful of upgrades on this one, including one that's a bit weird, but we do have 2 standard ones. We have the subway interface, which gives us some platforms underground there. We have an elevated concourse, which gives us another 4 platforms, because of course it does, as well as the elevated concourse, which is very common on a lot of, I don't even want to say modern train stations, but this is something that I don't see too much where I live. It's very common sort of in the mainland for the UK, and it's very common across, well, Scandinavia, where I've traveled a lot on trains. Even in little rural kind of middle of nowhere train stations, the elevated concourse, the Swedes, just Sweden everywhere, elevated concourse. And I really appreciate it because it keeps you out of the snow most of the time. So yeah, definitely enjoy a good elevated concourse. This is the weird part though. This is another one of those buildings or upgrades where I don't really know what it does. It's an office building. Employees of the railroad system conduct all kinds of business here. This would probably be better if I could disconnect it from the core asset, but as I can't do that, it's just a strange office. I mean, it looks good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing the look of the asset. The asset looks wonderful. I don't know what the point of it is. Now, we've mentioned subways a couple of times already, so it's probably fitting that we have a look at the modern metro station, which comes with 2 subway platforms. It is a pretty good looking asset, and it has an upgrade that I think is game-changing for City Skylines 2, potentially. It has the ability to add extra platforms, so you now have 4 subway platforms underneath the one station, which I think is great. I don't think that's been a thing in City Skylines 2 thus far. I would like to see this happen a little bit more. I think that would be great. We also have an entrance roof, which provides a little bit more comfort and a little bit of rotational symmetry for this guy. So you just have a really, really effective, really efficient, modern metro station with this one. It's great. Also a little bit of motorcycle parking. Really big on the motorcycle parking thus far. There is also an above ground variant of the subway station, which looks like this. This is another building that it's a little bit unassuming. It's quite humble as it sits currently, but you can do a couple of things to it to make it a little bit more interesting. Thing number 1 is the underground subway interface. So you could theoretically have an underground subway system in your city and then connect it to this guy, where your Sims can come up to an above ground subway network, if that's a thing you want to do, which I'm thinking I want to do that. It also has a platform roof, which again, it just transforms the look of the building. It isn't as transformative as the modern station upgrade for the local train station. It's still pretty good though. It's still doing a lot to make this thing just look a lot more interesting. Look at that, just the level of detail on this. It really is next level. And now we're going to change categories away from public transport into parks and plazas, because we have 2 little parks to talk about. They are in the large parks category. The first one is the Community City Park for $63,000. Now this guy is relatively simple. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's relatively simple. It's got a little bit of a water feature going on there. It's got a little bookstore here as well, which, let me tell you, I love a good bookstore. I really, really do. Just the smell of all of the paper, it's just one of my favorite things. I don't go to enough bookstores, and that smell, I associate it with sort of older things, so I can imagine that being in this super modern space, then going into a bookstore, which in itself is quite modern looking, but then being hit with that smell of the paper, oh, it'd be so good. I would imagine this is a video game after all, so we're never gonna know, but I would imagine that's a really good time. Now, the second park that we're gonna be dealing with is the Grand City Plaza. It is $128,000, and it's a fair bit bigger than the last one. It's also quite, well, it's also quite humble until you kind of get in close and realize that that's not a water feature, that is an underground plaza, which is just, wow. Wasn't expecting an underground plaza on this park, but I really like it, and I'm really, really curious to see what exactly it looks like when surrounded by a bunch of buildings. This is going to make for some really interesting central squares in a lot of different cities. Now, sticking with parks and recreation, but pivoting towards tourism, we have the Modern Art Museum, which is $1.2 million, but it is again a super unique looking building. This thing is so good looking, and again, I mean, I'm looking at that, we're gonna do it. I'm putting a subway through it. I'm doing it. It's probably not I don't know if it's a compliment, you know? I don't know if it's like a compliment to the chef, but I'm putting a subway through their building. And I mean, just look at it. It's so cool looking. That could be a road, it could be a train line, it could be an elevated tram line, it doesn't matter. It's so cool. This is just one of my favorite things to do. I know that this like maybe not this exact example, but trains and subways and stuff going through buildings, I know it's a thing in real life in some cities. It isn't where I come from, so I'm so excited to play around with this building. Of course, it doesn't have any upgrades. It is a tourism oriented building, so it's not going to come with any upgrades, but this is very, very cool. A lot of detail, a lot of space for pedestrians, little bit of disabled parking down here. We got some motorcycle parking as well. Just a lot of space for a lot of people to enjoy this building, and also deal with the subway going right through it, because that's a thing that I'm probably going to do at some point. And so that brings us to the last new asset in the Modern Architecture pack, which is in the communications category. It's in the telecoms subcategory, and it is going to be the Modern Telecom building. It is the Center for Media Broadcasting, Telecommunications, and Remote Cellular Networks. It increases the network carrying capacity. It's $1.2 million, $100,000 a month. It has a range of 6.5 kilometers. It's a pretty cool looking tower, all things considered. It is not quite as modern to me as everything else that's been in this pack so far, but I love it. I really, really do. I love the idea of this building. Just, I don't know, you're getting a little bit behind the scenes of how I've got these people going along that road. I really need to not show certain angles of this little junction. It's a great looking building though. Not as much going on the ground, which makes sense. It is a communications tower. It's not really designed as a pedestrian sort of hangout destination, so definitely makes sense that there's not as much going on, but I love it. I really do. I'm kind of excited to see where I can put this into my different cities. And I suppose that's where this city comes into play. This is the city of Townsville, which is a little something I've been putting together over the last couple of days, where I'm going to be showing off all of the content that comes to Cities Skylines 2 in the near to mid future. If you've been following the channel for a little bit, you'll know that I had been using a different city. I'd been using Linden, which was the first city I ever built for this game, to show off the new content. I'm still going to be playing with Linden a little bit, but the performance in Linden is so bad that I needed something else. Now, this city, as you can see, is a work in progress. There is a nice road layout that I put together in a live stream, and then all of the buildings that you're looking at, for the most part, were done off of the live stream. It's also worth noting that this city is far from perfect and that it's something that's not really going to be a series as we go on the channel, but it is something we'll come back to anytime there is new content for Cities Skylines 2. And that's why today we're going to be coming into my little German district, which I absolutely love and adore. I think it turned out really, really well. All of these buildings placed by hand, but theoretically you could do most of this without mods if you wanted to. It would just take a really long time, except for some of the surface stuff that I have going on, but we'll not talk about that. What I would like to talk about, what I would like to do is actually come in here and place the modern telecom building, because I think I can make it work. I think if I do this right, if I put it in the right spot, I think I could make this work. And so that's what I'm gonna try and do. So I want to come in here with something of a little alleyway. We have been playing around, or I have been playing around. There's no we in this city yet. I have been playing around with alleyways a little bit here and there. So I'm going to bring an alleyway, I suppose something like this. I do have it linked up there, which is great. I suppose it doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. I guess that's something we can deal with here. So we'll bring it over like this. And that's how we're going to connect this little road around, which is fine. And then I think the modern telecom building, it can just sit right there in the middle. Now it does look a little bit out of place, but I do have a couple of little high rises over here at the edge of my German district. I do have 2 of the department stores, which look like old factories. So having a slightly taller building, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. What I'd also like to do though, is maybe surround this space with a few more alleyways. And I think I want to put some parking in here. I know that's not super exciting, but I do think some parking in here would kind of make a little bit of sense. So let's have a very quick look at what we're dealing with in terms of parking lots. We have the small one, which is fine. We have the long one, which we could do 3 of these, which I think is exactly what I'm going to do. I also want to have this parking because it will get rid of a lot of the people parking at the sides of the roads, which is kind of an ongoing problem in this particular city. And then I just want to come in here with a little bit of a path at the back of those parking lots, a little bit of a path at the back of these buildings. I'm going to just get a little something going through here, a little something going through here, and a little something going down there. And then I can just detail around this with some surfaces. I can detail around it with some plants, and I think we can make this look pretty good. So I suppose first things first, we want to come in here with a nice grass surface. I'm going to keep it relatively simple for the grass surface. I don't want to go too crazy with it. So we're just going to go with the standard grass surface rather than the manicured one that I feel like I went for the manicured grass for a really long time in a lot of my builds. I'm kind of over it, to be honest. I don't want to say it's bad, but it's definitely run its course for me. We're also going to do the same grass texture at the front. I think I'll turn off my guidelines as well and just bring this around nice and quickly underneath all of these roads as fast as we can. It's just a surface, and there we go. It just tidies it up a little bit, and I like that a lot. I'm also thinking that a stone wall net lane around this asset might look pretty decent. So we're going to do exactly that. I've used the same stone wall for a lot of my builds so far in pretty much all of my cities. So I say all of my cities. I think this is my 3rd city in Cities Skylines 2, which I think is pretty good going, given that the game's been out for over a year now. I've only ever had Linden and then Columbia County, which we started, I think 2 months ago, maybe less than 2 months ago. So this being my 3rd city, and this, to be honest, is, I kind of consider this this isn't like a work city, you know. This isn't a city that I'm playing for. I mean, I'm obviously, right, we're obviously playing it for YouTube today, but this is the city that I load up when I just want to play some Cities Skylines and don't really worry about recording it. I built most of this, all of the road layouts in a live stream, but all of this stuff, I built it, well, at the time of recording, I built it this morning, and it was like, I played Cities Skylines for like 6 hours today, and I didn't record any of it. And I think that's the first time I've done that in genuinely years, and it was a really fun time. So I'm really enjoying this city just for that. And also it's an opportunity for me to play around with the German pack and the French pack. We'll have a look at that district another time, probably when we're playing around with the other, what is it, Urban Promenades pack that's come out at the same time as this one. We'll have a look at the French district when we get around to that one. But this has been a great opportunity for me to just sit down and play some City Skylines 2. And you know, I think the modern Telecom building fits in here pretty well. It's also weird looking at this district from this angle. I usually look at it from this one, but this entire building is just in shadow if I do that. So it's not, I mean, this is how I built it. This is the angle I built it from, which I think it looks better from this angle, but you know, the building's in shadow from that angle. So we'll look at it this way, which is totally fine. There is one small change I'd like to make to this space though, which is just going through here and just putting some wider sidewalks on just a few of these roads, just to push people to those parking lots, even though it really didn't do all that much. It might if no, it's really not doing anything. Okay, maybe we just won't do wide sidewalks on that side of the road. We'll do it on this side where the building is, but I like this a lot. I think it looks, I actually think it kind of works in here. Does it have noise pollution? It has a little bit. They'll manage, they'll be okay. Now, elsewhere in Townsville, we have all of these roads, most of which don't have anything on them. There is a little parish church in the distance you can see. There's also some suburbs, which is all using the UK pack because of course it is, but I have put in some districts just to give me an idea of where some things are going to go. So I'm gonna block out a little bit of building. We're not gonna be detailing it today because that's something I want to do with the Urban Promenades pack when we have a look at it in its video. But we do have space for a city hall, and that's very deliberate. This was something I did do on a live stream, and a few people in the chat of the stream were asking why I blocked this out and didn't put anything in it, and I couldn't really answer because I'm not allowed to talk about things that I'm not allowed to talk about until I'm allowed to talk about them. But the answer was because I can put the modern city hall right here, and I think it looks pretty good. We're gonna have some trams coming straight down towards it. We're obviously going to expand some surfaces on this thing and make it look interesting. But I was also thinking, why don't we put the service center at the other side? Why don't we have that back there and we can try and connect these guys together into sort of one big, you know, citizen service facility. So that's what's gonna go down here. At the other end of this rather large avenue, we have space for a park, which, as you might imagine, is where I'm going to put the Grand City Plaza, which just so happens to fit in here sort of perfectly. Now, it's not exactly central, and we will have to mess around with some roads here to make it fit a little bit better, but that's relatively easy to do. Let's be honest, and I think that is something that we can go ahead and do now just very quickly because it is really just quite simple. So we just want to bring this one-way road sort of up and around this entire thing. And then somehow, some way, I'm going to have to connect this all together in a way that makes sense. That is something I hadn't thought about. But, well, in saying that, actually, we do need to move these tram stops. So we need to get the tram lines in here. We'll have those run in a nice little one-way loop around this entire thing, which is all I really need to worry about it doing. So it loops around like this. We're going to add some tram stops to right about here, and we'll add a tram stop to right about here, and then we'll move the stops themselves. So I need to move this guy, if it's going to let me, into here, and I need to move this guy into here. Then we can bulldoze this entire stretch of road. We can bulldoze these guys as well, bulldoze you, and then we'll bulldoze, well, we don't need to bulldoze those. We can just change those out for some pedestrian streets. So you get changed, you get changed. Oh, I do need to get rid of the tram lines though. So we'll get rid of you, and we'll get rid of you. And then the rest of this just needs connected together. And I kind of have an idea for what I'm going to do with these corners. I think what we do is, first off, connect these top roads, because that's going to be a little bit easier. So bring you straight down and bring you straight down. And then for the corners, let's do a little 24 meters, and let's do 24 meters. We'll do the same on this side and over here as well. And then I'm going to just do a little S-bend in here. So we're going to go up to about that spot. We're going to come over to there. In fact, we'll go a little bit further and over to there. It doesn't look perfect, but I think I can make that work. And I think that'll be just fine. So we'll bring you over to there as well. And that is basically how we're going to have the Grand City Plaza in the middle of that square, which is eventually going to be surrounded by buildings from the other content creator pack that released at the same time as this one. And you know, just because I can't help myself, we're going to put the Modern Technical University just over here in this square that was laid out for a university. And I think we're going to hit this with all of the upgrades that we can hit it with. I'm very tempted to avoid the lecture hall and just do a bunch of these guys, but they don't really fit in there, which is just a tiny bit disappointing. So you know what I might do? I might just mess up my grid here a little bit by doing, well, that basically, which I don't love. I'm not a huge fan of doing that. I could, I suppose, just get rid of that road completely, or just change the entire thing into an alleyway, or turn it into a pedestrian road. We could do all of the above. In fact, you know what? We'll just get rid of it. I think that's the better idea, because I'm curious to see, do these guys fit on this side? They do. Does this guy fit on this side? It does. Let's do, I mean, the lecture hall's not going to fit in here perfectly central anyway, which is a little bit frustrating, but what we'll do is maybe put it right here. And I think that's kind of an interesting little place for it. We can play around with some detailing in this space a little bit later on. And then what we'll do is just maybe stack a few of these guys over on this side of things and see if, I don't know, is it a good idea or a bad idea to have, oh, I've just knocked these off ever so slightly. They're supposed to be there and there. And you are supposed to be actually in the middle of the asset, because this is all just extended surfaces at the back here where it's trying to connect to that road. So that gives me a capacity of 10,250 for my university. Honestly, I'm kind of okay with that. Okay, so fair to say some plans slightly changed, but I do happen to think the Modern Technical University looks pretty good in here. It's sort of symmetrical, which is totally fine, and it's got some, you know, bit of landscaping around it just to really seat it into this plot of land. There is still some work to be done out back. That's something I'm either going to do off camera or we'll do it as a part of our look at the Urban Promenades DLC, because I do want to surround a lot of these buildings with the buildings in that expansion, because it has a few ploppable assets, but it has a lot of growable assets, about 60 growable assets. So we'll take a look at that in its own video, which should be going up either at the same time as or within 30 minutes of this video. So keep an eye out for that on the channel. But I think that is going to do us for today. I think we've had a pretty good look at everything that is available in the Modern Architecture Content Creator Pack. A link for that pack will be in the video description if you're interested in checking it out. This video isn't sponsored, but I feel if I'm going to show you the thing, I should probably also give you a link to actually be able to go and get the thing if you happen to be interested in doing so. So that'll be in the video description down there beneath the like button and beneath the subscribe button. See what I did there? That was a YouTube thing is what that was. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, everybody. This has been an absolute pleasure as always. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.